While many printers have shifted their focus, Freeport Press has remained committed to the art of print. For companies that need a printing partner for magazines, look no further than Freeport Press. We offer the capabilities a customer would expect from a national printer while offering the level of customer service clients expect from a family-owned business. Freeport Press. We do print, and we do it well. FreeportPress.com.
For us, being a troublemaker is about not turning a blind eye to problems in our society. If there's something wrong in society or just around you, you have to speak up. You have to say, hey, it's wrong. That makes you a troublemaker.
Troublemakers is a magazine about society's misfits, at least from the Japanese point of view. A bilingual English-Japanese magazine, Troublemakers came about as a way to showcase people who were different, stayed true to themselves, or about the long road those people had taken to self-acceptance. The founders, editor Yuto Miyamoto and art director Manami Inoue, were inspired by a notion that Japanese culture perhaps did not value those who strayed too far from the herd. The magazine has been a success not just in Japan but globally, and perhaps mirrors a trend we see in streaming, for example, of a general public acceptance of universal stories from different places.
Gengo nanté kinishee.
Language be damned. Think especially of the success of Japanese television movies like Shogun or Tokyo Vice or Godzilla Minus One, of Japanese pop and anime and food. It's an endless list. But Troublemakers is more than just a cultural document. It is proof of something shared, a commonality of human experience that exists everywhere. Speaking to Yuto and Manami, he sensed a desire and an invitation to connect with everyone, and that's ultimately what Troublemakers tries to do. My name is Arjun Basu, and this is The Full Bleed. So thank you for joining us from Japan. I think this is the furthest we've traveled so far for this podcast. So tell me, Yuto, we'll start with you. Tell me how you came to create Troublemakers. What did you do in your past that led you to this?
Okay, how far I should go back?
You don't have to tell us how you were born or anything like
Okay.
that. But
Okay, I started my career as an editor at Wired Japan. So I studied biology and journalism. So I was super lucky that I started that great career. So then I quit the job after working there for 3 years. And since then, I've been working as a freelance. So I was always a magazine lover, but I didn't have any specific topic or theme that I feel I have to cover by myself until coming across the word Troublemaker. So it all began with the title, Troublemakers.
yeah, so you say that in your editorial, you came across the word and it intrigued you, and you saw it as a positive word, not a negative word. And
Right.
a magazine came out of that.
Exactly. I think it's part of because we are not English natives. So I'd like to say we creatively misunderstood or misinterpret the word. So in the dictionary, troublemaker is someone who creates trouble, of course, the like literal meaning. But we thought we are troublemakers in the Japanese society. So the word clicked with us. And for us, troublemaker means someone who is not silent on the problems or troubles in our society. So we misinterpret the word in a positive way. So that word inspired us and gave us ideas about who we want to hear, who we want to listen to in the magazine.
Manami, what about you?
I've spent years working as an art director and graphic designer in the branding field. I designed the logos or visual identity for companies or products. And designing a magazine was new for me, but it's something I've aspired to since my teenage years. In a sense, It feels like a dream come true for me. And Troublemaker, the world, is inspired by futurists, which I interviewed in our magazine first issue. There, they have Troublemakers class. So it's inspired to me.
So this just seems like a way for you guys to meet people you've always wanted to meet. Why did you decide to make it bilingual?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just simply, we wanted to reach international readers, but there was a specific moment for me to decide to make this magazine bilingual. So just before making Troublemakers, we visited Portugal. And when you visit Portugal, you have to visit a great magazine shop called Under the Cover.
Yes.
And I found a great bilingual Portuguese and English title called Levo Azul, which means blue mist in Portuguese. That's a beautiful bilingual magazine about conversations for humanity. So the latest issue is about a more gentle internet. And as a tech lover, I really liked the magazine. So I found it at Under the Cover and I read it and contacted the editor, Ines. And we ended up having coffee together and I wanted to buy the past issues. So that experience really made me realize how bilingual magazines can reach anyone in the world. That was so fantastic experience for me. So now, as a magazine creator, I wanted to make the same international connection. So that's why we decided to make the magazine bilingual.
Just from a graphic point of view, I used to edit a bilingual magazine, but it was English-French. And so the languages, they use the same alphabet. So they're side by side and we were just using different fonts. And each font had its own weight because one language couldn't look more important than the other. There's a lot of design decisions that go into that. How did you as a designer decide to, because obviously the Japanese and the Roman alphabets are so different. How did you decide on your design principle here? Some pages, especially the title pages, they're on the same place, but then the story is on different pages. How did you just make that decision?
At first, I considered laying out both languages on the same page, but it quickly became messy and difficult to read because, as you mentioned, so different from Japanese language and English language. So in addition, the photos ended up being smaller because of the layout. We think that most readers will only read in one language. So we decided to separate the layout by language.
When I was editing bilingual magazines, I found a lot of people, I come from a bilingual country or nominally bilingual, so people like to practice the other language, but people were actually practicing their language skills because they could see the language side by side. And so if they didn't understand a word, they'd go to the English or the French or whatever.
Yeah, some people said it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to learn. Are you a troublemaker in the Japanese magazine marketplace?
Yeah.
I think we are. Basically, we both, Manami and I, don't like Japan's so-called collectivist culture where our society tend to prioritize groups over individuals. But we believe that we can be different, we can be unique, we can be misfits, we can be who we are. So that's our message in the magazine.
Japan has an amazing magazine culture, a lot of magazines. So just describe what the magazine scene in Japan is like for people who don't know it.
Yeah, that's true. Japan has a strong print or magazine culture. But for me, at least I think the majority of Japanese magazines are like catalogs, not like great storytelling print product, at least for me. So no offense to Popeye, but Popeye has a great influence on that. And because Popeye was and is super successful, I think many magazines follow the Popeye style, which is a catalog style, I would call. So many pictures, and small texts, and oftentimes they are related to consumer culture. So what to buy, what to use, what to see, where to go. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad thing, but as a journalist, I prefer deep storytelling when I read magazines.
I think you've described magazine culture in much of the world, actually. Most magazines, widely available ones, are consumerist titles. Buy, see, try. And that's how they feed themselves. And now with affiliate marketing, their websites are basically just, please click here so we can make a few cents. And that's what's happened to a lot of magazines. And I think we're seeing a backlash with magazines like Troublemakers, who are coming in and saying, no, actually, we like the words and pictures. The combination of words and pictures that makes magazines unique. And we want to tell stories visually and through words. And that's what you're doing.
Thank you.
Where do you want to take Troublemakers in the future? I realize you've only created one issue, but how does the brand grow?
So we are a super small team, just me and Manami. So we will publish a new issue annually, like one issue per year. So just slowly taking our time, developing idea organically. And I hope we will feature only what believe it's important for us. So yeah, money is always problem, challenging. So I hope, at least for now, our goal is just continue publishing once a year, and it breaks even and growing readership organically. We don't do any advertising or PR.
And how has the reaction in Japan been to your first issue?
So far, so good, actually. Yeah, it's much better than what we expected. So, of course, some people don't like our magazine too expensive, and some people don't read English in the Japanese market. But yeah, I think so far, so good. We got many positive reactions, and I believe personal stories can be universal. And many people, really liked what we told in the first issue. So we just want to continue doing that.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jeremy Leslie at Mag Culture. We're proud to support The Full Bleed because we love magazines too. Visit magculture.com and see why print is far from over. It's just getting started. Read the journal for interviews and reviews, listen to our podcasts, visit our shop in London and online, and come to our live events in London and New York. We love magazines. Subscribe to our newsletter for weekly updates, all at magculture.com.
Print is Dead is made possible by the support of the Society of Publication Designers. The SPD powers the future of visual storytelling, setting the standard for editorial excellence and shaping the future of visual culture. For more information, visit spd.org.
I think the bilingual magazines, for a long time, publishers in all countries were not too thrilled with bilingual magazines because they were worried about the reader. But I think you're right. These are universal stories about people that everyone can relate to. They just happen to be in Japan. All the stories aren't even Japanese. So you have stories from all over the place. And I think we're seeing a lot of bilingual magazines coming out now that are stylistically like Troublemakers. They're just trying new things and they want to be international. And I think there's a bigger acceptance. How's the reaction been outside of Japan, like in Europe and North America?
Oh, it's great. Now we are on your podcast. So that means, great news. It's also better than what we expected. We have now stockists in more than 10 countries outside of Japan. And the other day, I got a great, long, intimate, warm message from Taiwanese bookshop. I was so moved about that. Yeah, like you said, I forgot to mention, but another inspiration for me making bilingual magazine was that I visited IndieCon in Hamburg in 2023, just before making the magazine. And I met Chinese-English magazine called Tay, or Italian-English magazine called Dame. And they are so great. And like you said, people accept it.
I wonder how much of that has to do with even things like Netflix and the streamers, where we are seeing movies from all over the world now, or TV shows. half the shows I watch are either based in Japan or Japanese. And people used to always say that North America, especially English speakers, won't read subtitles. But that's obviously not true. And the success of, let's just say, Asian-originated movies and TV shows in the rest of the world just shows that no one really cares anymore where the story comes from. They just want a good story. But I wonder how much of that has actually helped the bilingual magazines, just in terms of acceptance.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but yeah, sounds like it should be.
It could work.
Yeah, not only like Japanese movies or series, but Korean series are huge success right now in the US or everywhere in the world. Yeah, probably that's one of the reasons.
I can see a business model where this can almost be franchised. Like you could have international versions of Troublemakers because it can transport itself so easily to any country in the world. And then it would be bilingual, like Portuguese English or Spanish English or French English, whatever. It could go absolutely anywhere.
Yeah, sounds great. We are open. We are open to discussing the idea. Please email us if someone listening to this show want to translate our magazine into French, Portuguese, whatever language.
Okay, Manami, what are 3 magazines or media that excite you right now?
Yeah, it's tough to narrow it down, but I've thought of 3 that really stand out to me. First, Futurist. It is an intersectional feminist collective that I interviewed in our first issue I mentioned before. It is where feminism, design, and politics meet and manage a learning community and publishing platform. And actually, we are preparing a Japanese translated book that compiles their articles. And regarding magazines, McAfee is special to me. Nearly 10 years ago, during my first trip to Europe, I discovered the window issue at the famous magazine shop Do You Read Me in Berlin. At the time, I was like, oh, this is it. McAfee has been featured on this podcast as well, so I'm sure it needs no further introduction. Maybe you know more than me. Yes. And third one, I mentioned Sociotype Journal. They are a type foundry, and we actually use their font gesture in their magazine.
You said something interesting, that you're going to publish Futurists in Japanese in a book.
Yes.
Is that something you're going into too in publishing?
Yes, yeah. I'm translating now, and we picked up 5 articles of their archives for Japanese readers.
And that's going to be a standalone. It's not going to be in a Troublemakers. It's going to be its own thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an interesting direction. So are you going to do that if you find something interesting that hasn't been translated into Japanese yet? Translate it into Japanese and publish it yourself?
Yes, Japanese designers can learn from future perspective.
Okay.
I want to add the mini book is a different series from the Troublemakers magazine, but it's still from Troublemakers Publishing. That's our official name. So we will have kind of 2 lines, I would say, the magazine, Troublemakers magazine, and mini series called Misfits Stories. So the Futurist book is going to be the first book of the Misfits stories. Unfortunately, it's gonna be only Japanese.
No, that makes sense. You're introducing other people to Japanese readers. So there is another sideline here. There's a publishing component as well, outside of the magazine. Okay, Yuto, what are your 3?
The first one is Lindsay, a magazine based in Melbourne, Australia, that celebrates people and places. They haven't launched a new issue for the past, I think, 3 or 4 years, but still, Lindsay is one of my favorites. I really like how it looks and it feels. Actually, the size of Troublemakers is the same as the Lindsay's. So I also like how the magazine has a personal and global perspective at the same time. The name Lindsay comes after the editor's grandfather, but yet the magazine features stories around the world. So I want both perspective in Troublemakers as well. Number 2, Epic. Do you know Epic? It's a LA-based media that specializes in long-form storytelling. So I came across Epic when I was working at Wired Japan because Epic occasionally collaborates with Wired US, and I translated one of their articles when working at Wired. Yeah, my favorite among them is Little America. Now we can watch the show on Apple TV Plus as well. But I really like their approach of telling stories of everyday people, in this case, immigrants in America. That approach, telling everyday people's stories, is also something that Troublemakers want to try and continue doing that in the future as well. For the last one, I want to introduce a Japanese magazine called Spectator. It's not a British conservative weekly, by the way. The magazine Spectator is about hippie culture and counterculture. And the magazine started in 1999. So now it's 25 years old. For each issue, they choose one theme, such as wabi-sabi or Zen, or sometimes they feature whole earth catalog before. And what I like about the magazine is that, at least to me, they look like they don't care about the current trends or what people are interested in right now. Instead, they just feature what they are curious about. But they have strong 25-year-old readership, and many readers, including me, trust them. If they think something is interesting and important, that should be important. So I really appreciate their stance, and I want Troublemakers to be like that as well.
And finally, what makes a person a troublemaker?
That's a great question. As I said, for us, being a troublemaker is about not turning a blind eye to problems in our society. So to be a troublemaker, if there's something wrong in society or just around you, you have to speak up. You have to say, hey, it's wrong. That makes you a troublemaker. And I want to see more and more troublemakers. What do you think, Manami?
Yeah, when I was young, I was called a troublemaker because I didn't keep silence when I found something bad, or I don't know, how can I say, something bad. So it's a problem or it's a trouble, I said. But I was proud of myself as I am. So when I found Troublemakers class on Futurist website, I said, oh, it is me and I'm good to be myself.
Yeah, you're not alone too.
Yes.
There are people like you. I love that Troublemakers exists. It feels like the world is a better place because of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been The Full Bleed, a podcast about the future of magazines and the magazines of the future. The Full Bleed is a production of Magazium LLC. This episode was produced by Patrick Mitchell. If you'd like to comment on the show or just, start a conversation, send me an email at hello@magazium.co or visit our website at magazium.co, where you can read transcripts of all of our interviews along with portfolios, archival photos, links, and more. We've got a swag shop too. And a reminder to those of you who still read fiction, my next novel, The Reeds, is out in October and available for pre-order just about everywhere. My name is Arjun Basu. Thanks very much for listening. Welcome to the future.